we discussed some of this morning, but the problem of homelessness in the District of Columbia is no different than nationally in the sense that it's a serious problem. Trying to find adequate, sanitary, safe shelter for the homeless, our most vulnerable population. And so the District of Columbia has stops and starts and et cetera. And then we come to the point where the Franklin shelter has become the focus of our attention recently. As you may recall, last spring, Mayor Fenty tried to include this closing into a bill involving the Gale School. The Central Union was moving there, and fortunately, because of your visit, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wells saw this, and we called it to the council's attention and required the mayor to resubmit the Gale School proposal without that being implied in it. Also, the advocates have been down here talking to us about the slowly but surely shutting down of Franklin School. 50 beds reduction, 100 beds reduction, with the idea of, through attrition, planned attrition, that they would finally close it. The council, to its credit, with your leadership, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wells, crafted a bill that required the mayor to inform this council as to what our hypothermia plans were, and they wanted to give 300 men supportive housing first, which we all support, and that Mr. Wells is going to have a hearing on it after the legislation was passed. But anyway, the point is that the council passed this legislation requiring the mayor to give us this detailed information before you closed Franklin Shelter. But what happened? A day or two before the 10th day that the mayor had to sign the legislation, he closed the shelter. Closed the shelter. This is just totally unacceptable to all of us. I mean, if you wanted to close the shelter, comply with the law. And then, I think it was Thursday or Friday, late, 4:30 or 5 o'clock, we got a report from the mayor outlining what the council had asked him to do. By everybody's definition, whether it's yours, Mr. Wells, or mine, or anybody else's, this is an incomplete report. This shelter closing circumvented the law, and that's not right. The law should be obeyed. The mayor should have signed the law, which he finally did, and obeyed the law. He didn't do so. So I wanted to bring this emergency today to get the mayor to comply with the law. Location is very important for our shelters. There's some people who don't think they are. That's important. Look at our two biggest shelters. Out of 801 East, way in, I'm glad they're out in Ward 8, but that's away from the downtown area. New York Avenue in Mr. Thomas's ward, away from the downtown area. First of all, we have a situation where if you're going at 7 at night, you're out at 7 in the morning. And what these guys do during the day, they wander the streets. They ought to be in some kind of training or other kind of program, but they wander the streets. Many of them are forced to panhandle to get money for whatever they're going to get money for. And it's an awful situation. And so this closing was done illegally, in our view. It was done precipitous. Then we had Mr. Wells, you'd be commended. He had a hearing on this matter. He sat here all day, hear from providers, hear from the homeless, where even the providers indicated that this was done rapidly, in some extent haphazardly. There were apartments gotten for people that had not been inspected, have housing code violations. Mr. Wells, to his credit, had staff going out looking. Because the mayor wouldn't send us the addresses, I don't know where he got them from. I want to get them. We don't know where they are. It appears, Ms. Alexander, that most of them are in Ward 7 and 8, which is, we don't mind it, but let's not put them all in one part of our city. Let's put some shelter downtown. And so that's where we are. We had a discussion about it this morning. Another thing, Mr. Chairman, I found out after our meeting is that they increased the beds 801 East to try to make up for the beds being taken from Franklin Shelter. But they didn't increase the lockers. So you have men out there with a lottery as who gets a locker to lock up your legal belongings. Now, how ridiculous can you get? Then they had a bus. I found out about this bus. A 16-passenger bus for 300 people. Ridiculous. They finally got a 20-passenger bus. Now, if it's running properly, they got a 40-passenger bus. But they make it as difficult as they can for the homeless to get around. And as a result of our discussion this morning, you've indicated, Mr. Wells have indicated, desire to try to tighten this situation up. I think the majority of us on this council want shelter downtown. And I'm not wedded to Franklin School per se, but we want shelter downtown. And 150 beds is reasonable, but we need supportive services with those 150 beds. In order to get all this put together, I'm going to make a motion to postpone this to the next legislative meeting, whether it's called or a regular meeting, so we can put this on the agenda. It's coming back on this agenda, you know, and the 12 others of you have to face this issue, be humane, and vote to keep downtown shelters open. It was in the budget for 2009 to have the shelters open downtown. Franklin was in the budget. And so it's not a budgetary impact, it's a philosophical difference. And finally, you know, the thing that bothers me is that when Mayor Fenton was on the chair of the Committee on Human Services, I was on that committee. He fought hard to try to keep Franklin open. But now it's a different story. And so, Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I want to move to postpone until the next call or legislative session of the council.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Berry. You have a motion before you to postpone consideration of this issue until the next council legislative session. And